I'm so excited to bring up our next presenter, a young man who's committed to making a difference. His bio is extensive, and that's why we only bring the best of the best to the Power Networking Conference. His name is WilliamPatterson, CEO of the Barron Solution Group. And this young man is committed to making a difference. In working with Dr. George Fraser, he is the brainchild of the Moses movement, making ourselves economically successful. He's also one of the founding partners of the Black Wealth Alliance. And so would you please give a round of applause to my friend and your friend, WilliamPatterson, as he talks about Black Wealth Matters Too.
This is one of the most exciting times in history. But as Charles Dickens said, for Black America, for many of us, it is the best of times, but for far too many of us, it's also the worst of times. And one of the things that I want to really show is how much not only Black lives matter, but also Black wealth matters when it comes to every aspect of our lives. When I look at the struggles that so many of us have, they come back to this question of economics. When I look at education and our access to education, it comes back to economics. When I look at healthcare and the quality of healthcare, it comes back to this question of economics. And how do we begin to better leverage wealth in order to enact social change? I'll tell you, when I first started to learn about money, it was because of the influences in my life, specifically my parents. And I'll tell you, I remember my father, and I asked him for an allowance as a young kid. And he says, I'm not going to give you an allowance, but I'm going to show you how to build wealth. So what he did is he taught me how to recycle cans. But it wasn't, just going around finding a few cans. He taught me how to negotiate with schools for their cans, to do this in bulk. He taught me how to organize other neighborhood kids. He said, I want you to see value in things that other people can't see. That was one of the most important lessons he taught me as a young child, because value is the greatest attractive force of money in the world. And I remember a little later when I got older, one of my goals was to be a professional basketball player. And I know some of you probably laughing because I'm about 5'2", right? But, this was the era of the Muggsy Bogues and the Spud Webb. I said, it's possible. It's possible. But what did people tell me when I wanted to be a professional basketball player? They said, are you crazy? And the reason they said, are you crazy? They said the odds of you making it into the NBA, you're more likely to be struck by lightning than you are to make it into the NBA. And I said, okay. I've never been one to back down from a challenge. So it was about work ethic. And one of the things that my father said, okay, well, if this is a goal of yours, I want you to develop mastery. So he taught me to read books, and I read books of people like Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, and I saw the work ethic that it took for them to be successful. And one of the things that I did, I was out at 5 in the morning practicing doing 500 free throws every morning at 5 a.m. because I knew I had to be better. And I ended up breaking my hand in high school, which ruined my chances at a college career in basketball. And I said, well, if I can't be a professional basketball player, maybe I can own a team one day. So I started to focus on becoming the CEO of a Fortune 100 company. And what ended up happening is people said, "Are you crazy? You're more likely to make it into the NBA than to be the CEO of a Fortune 100 company." And I said, okay. I've never been one to back down from a challenge, and I've never been one to not be afraid to go against the odds. And when I think about this concept of building wealth, I'll tell you another story about my father, which was really important as I started to understand the importance of wealth. I asked him for a pair of shoes. They were a pair of Nikes that had the pump on them. How many people, remember the Nikes that had the pump? All right. And that pair of Nikes that had the pump, I said, they were about $200. I said, I got to have it. And he says, okay, come here. Let me show you something, son. Look at that. Look at that beat-up pair of shoes you have in the corner. How much do you think those are worth? And I said, probably next to nothing. He said, come here. He pulled up a stock chart for Nike, and it had nearly doubled over a couple of years. And he said, now tell me, what would you rather have? Would you rather have the pair of shoes, or would you rather have this stock? And it was at that moment that I realized with every dollar, I was choosing to be rich or poor. And not only could I begin to build wealth by moving from being a consumer to being an investor, I could build even greater wealth by becoming the business that produced the products and services that my friends were buying. And that was a really pivotal moment in my life. And there was another moment. I remember talking with my grandfather. And my grandfather says, I want you to understand something about wealth. People don't pay you to work for them. They pay you not to work for yourself. They don't pay you to work for them. They pay you not to work for yourself. Black brothers and sisters, if you understood even a quarter of your brilliance, the world would bow at your feet. You are the originators of math and science. You can master finance, and you must master finance. There's the Titanic story, right? Where the ship is going down. And what do they say? It's okay, just keep playing the music. Well, as black people, we can no longer afford to play the music. We need to get those that we care about and those that we have influence onto that life raft. Because we are not going to be a part of a legacy of a sinking ship when it comes to economics. There was another important story about economics as it pertains to healthcare, because black wealth matters. Black wealth matters too. When we think about Black Lives Matter, we've lost far too many of our brothers and sisters to violence. We've lost far too many to police brutality. We've lost far too many to institutional racism, institutional injustice. But being able to shift the economic picture will give us more power to address many of those issues. And one of my favorite comedians is Chris Rock. And I remember a story that Chris Rock said. He says, you know what? We all gonna die at some point. But at least if you have insurance, you're gonna die on a mattress. And I say that because I remember when my sister became ill. She was brilliant lady, still is, brilliant lady. And, lawyer, thriving career. And she got diagnosed with meningoencephalitis, which was a swelling around the lining of the brain, where she lost complete control of her body. She could only blink. And when we looked at that, it was devastating. But it was because we had access to top doctors. We had access to be able to get her into specialists because of the financial resources that saved her life. But there are far too many brothers and sisters who don't have that access. There are far too many brothers and sisters who are not taking advantage of insurance vehicles, wealth-building vehicles, things that will allow us to protect our future and protect our wealth. When I look at my mother, who passed away from cancer not too long ago, and it was because we had some resources that we were able to help her, but there's so many who don't have those resources. There's so many who are not doing the fundamental things that will allow us to protect our wealth, to protect our children, to leave a legacy, to make sure that we have wills and trusts in place. I always say that becoming wealthy is not difficult, it just takes time and focus. Unfortunately, most people don't focus on becoming wealthy until they don't have much time. The time is now for us to begin to focus on building wealth. When we look at education, I have a little cousin who's about to start USC. The tuition there, I believe, is about $70,000. $70,000. So she's about to spend at least $280,000 on her college education. And if you're doing that through loans, when you look at the economic impact of that, and you look at what job am I going to be able to get when you come out after spending $280,000 on loans, it's time for us to make a shift. Coming back to this idea, people don't pay you to work for them, they pay you not to work for yourself. It is time to begin to think about business ownership. One of the things that we do through our program, we have a program called the Bearing Young Millionaires program, where we teach business and financial skills to students in inner city schools and also to teen mothers. And we address some of the critical areas of wealth building that are not taught in schools because the educational system is broken when it comes to wealth building. If you're going to spend $280,000 on education and not learn anything about business or finance, that's a problem. Because when you come out of there, if the only thing that you can do is work for someone else, that's a problem. So as parents, we need to focus on setting our children up to be economically successful and to be financially independent. Now, you may choose to work for someone else, but you don't want to have to work for someone else because there are far too many of us working jobs that we hate because I can't leave this job. I need that check. No longer should that be the case. When I look at what we do through the Young Millionaires program and helping people to tap into their passion, organize others, to understand how to manage money, sales skills, negotiation skills, these things are critical life skills that will determine your income that are not being taught in school. It's important for you as parents, for uncles, as brothers and sisters, to make sure that your children are exposed to financial strategies that can help them build wealth. I remember another story, which is my friend Chris Powell. He's one of my clients who runs a business which is Math Tutoring Experts, and he also is a speaker. The amazing thing about Chris Powell, some of you may have seen him in the halls, is Chris Powell has cerebral palsy, but he runs 2 successful businesses. And I remember one day, Chris told me a story that he had fallen, and he couldn't get up, and he was alone in his house. And he said, you know what, Lord? If you help me get up, I promise I will never allow myself to be in this situation again. Well, Chris got up. And he said, once I got up, I knew I had to get going. Black people, it's time for us to get going. There's something that's called the law of holes. In life and business and finance, the law of holes says, if you're in a hole, stop digging. Okay? Put the shovel down. And I think we all know some people still digging, right? Black wealth matters because that's the hand out of that hole. Black wealth matters. It allows us to have better education. It allows us better access to health care. It creates a legacy for your children. And I'll end with a story, again, from another one of my clients, which is Richard Kemp, who was telling one of his friends, he said, hey, you need to start focusing on business and finance in your life. It's an important thing. Again, he's doing his part because he knows black wealth matters. He's telling his friend, focus on wealth building. He said, I'm really just not that interested in money and finance. There's so much other stuff going on. And he said, tell me this, do you know who your great-grandfather was? And he said, no, not really. He said, you know why? Because he didn't leave you anything. And he said, I guarantee if your grandfather had left you, $10 or $20 million, you would have a monument on the front lawn and a poster. So no one understands that black wealth matters and that we have an obligation to our children to do something better. If you're not that familiar with wealth building strategies, start somewhere. And there are people that can help you. Reach out. If you're in a hole, stop digging. I'll say, when you look at what wealth means to you in terms of your ability to own your time, and that's really ultimately what so much of building wealth is about, is owning your time. So imagine if you own your time and you can get back the 40 to 50, sometimes 60, 70 hours that you're working for someone else to focus on your $1 million or your $1 billion idea. Black wealth matters. It allows you to change the future and the course of your family, of your community, of the country, of the world. So no one understands that black wealth matters too. Thank you.